I stood there in my best suit, the one I'd ironed twice to make sure it looked sharp, feeling like a fool. My name's Grant Whitaker, 39 years old, and I'd come to this rooftop party in downtown Seattle because my wife, Celeste, asked me to. She works for some fancy lifestyle brand, all about luxury and glamour, and I was proud of her, proud enough to put on a tie and smile at people I didn't know. The venue was stunning, with string lights hanging above us and the city skyline glowing in the distance. I figured it'd be a night to celebrate her, maybe even us. But as soon as we walked in, I could feel something off. She kissed my cheek quick, said, "Mingle, okay?" and then disappeared into the crowd. I grabbed a beer from the bar and tried to play the supportive husband, nodding at her coworkers, making small talk about the weather or whatever. It wasn't my scene, but I was here for her. Then I saw her. Celeste, my wife of 11 years, was out on the dance floor with her boss, Jasper Klein. He's the CEO of her company, some slick guy with a perfect haircut and a smile that says he owns the room. They were dancing close, too close. Her hand rested on his shoulder, his arm snaked around her waist, and they moved like they'd done it before. I watched, my beer getting warm in my hand, waiting for her to glance my way, to wave me over, anything. She didn't. She laughed at something he said, her head tilting back, her eyes bright in a way I hadn't seen in months. The music was loud, some jazzy beat that made my stomach twist, and I felt like I was fading into the background. People bumped past me, chatting and sipping cocktails, and I just stood there, invisible. I couldn't take it anymore. I walked over, weaving through the crowd, my heart pounding. When I got close, I tapped her shoulder. She turned, her smile fading a little when she saw me. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "What's going on here?" Jasper stepped back, smirking, like he was in on some joke I wasn't. Celeste brushed her hair behind her ear and looked at me like I was interrupting. "We're just dancing, Grant," she said, her tone sharp. I swallowed hard. "It doesn't look like just dancing," I said, glancing at Jasper, who didn't even have the decency to look away. She sighed, loud enough for me to hear over the music, and then she said it, words that hit me like a punch. "I'll dance with whoever I want. You have two options, sit and watch or leave." I stared at her, waiting for her to take it back, to laugh it off, to say she didn't mean it. She didn't. Her eyes were cold, daring me to argue. Jasper chuckled under his breath, and that was it. I turned and walked away. My chest felt tight, my face hot with shame. I pushed through the crowd, past the clinking glasses and fake smiles, and headed for the exit. I didn't look back to see if she cared. The elevator ride down was quiet, just me and the hum of the machinery, and when I stepped outside, the cool night air hit me hard. I'd come here to support her, to be part of her world, and she'd just told me I didn't belong. I left the party, left her there with him, and started walking. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay. The streets were busy, cars honking, people laughing as they spilled out of bars. I kept moving, my shoes clicking against the pavement, my mind racing. We'd been married 11 years, 11 years of fights, and making up, of building a life together. And now this. I thought about how she'd changed since she started climbing the ladder at work, how she'd talk about Jasper like he was some genius, how she'd come home late more often. I'd brushed it off, told myself it was nothing. But tonight wasn't nothing. Tonight was her choosing him over me, right in front of everyone. I ended up at the waterfront, the docks quiet except for the lapping waves. I sat on a bench, staring out at the dark water, replaying her words. Sit and watch, or leave. She didn't even give me a real choice. I pulled out my phone, thinking about calling her, but what would I say? She'd made it clear where I stood. So I didn't call. I just sat there, alone, wondering how we got here. It was almost 2 hours later when my phone buzzed. Her name lit up the screen, Celeste. "Where are you?" the text read. No apology, no explanation, just that. I didn't answer. What was there to say? I'd left, just like she told me to. I stood up, my legs stiff from sitting too long, and decided I wasn't going home. Not tonight. I called Owen, my oldest friend, the guy who's been there through every mess I've ever made. He picked up on the second ring. "You okay, man?" he asked, his voice rough like he'd been asleep. "Can I crash at your place?" I said. He didn't ask questions, just told me to come over. I took a cab to his apartment, the city blurring past me, and when I got there, he opened the door with a beer in his hand and another one for me. He didn't say much, just let me in, and I was grateful for it. I dropped onto his couch, the weight of the night sinking in. Celeste hadn't followed me. She hadn't even tried. And that hurt more than the words she'd said. I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing her with Jasper, the way she moved with him, the way she looked at me like I was nothing. I'd always thought we were solid, that we could handle anything. But tonight, I wasn't so sure. I sipped the beer, the cold bottle sweating in my hand, and wondered what came next. Did she mean it? Was this just a fight, or was it something bigger? Owen snored from his room, and I stared at the ceiling, her voice echoing in my head. Sit and watch, or leave. I'd chosen to leave, but now what? I didn't have answers, just questions and a sick feeling in my gut. The party was supposed to be a celebration, but it felt like the start of something ending, and I didn't know how to stop it. I walked out of that rooftop party like a ghost slipping through the cracks of a life I didn't recognize anymore. My name's Grant Whitaker, and I'm 39, a guy who thought he had a solid marriage until about an hour ago. The jazz band's notes faded behind me as I pushed through the glass doors, the laughter of Celeste's coworkers ringing in my ears like some cruel soundtrack. My wife of 11 years, had just told me to sit and watch her leave, all because I dared to question why she was dancing with her boss, Jasper Klein, like I wasn't even there. I chose to leave, not because I wanted to, but because staying felt like agreeing to be invisible. The elevator dinged, and I stepped in alone, the mirrored walls showing me a man in a suit that suddenly felt too tight, too wrong for the moment. I didn't say goodbye to anyone, didn't wave or make excuses. I just vanished. Outside, the Seattle night hit me with a damp chill, the kind that seeps into your bones. The streets were alive, cars honking, groups of people stumbling out of bars, their voices loud and carefree. I started walking, my polished shoes clicking against the wet pavement, no real direction in mind. My chest was tight, my head spinning with what I'd just seen. Celeste's hand on Jasper's shoulder, his arm around her waist, the way she laughed like she used to laugh with me. I'd stood there with my beer, waiting for her to notice me, to remember I was her husband, not some stranger at the bar. She didn't. And then those words, you have two options, sit and watch or leave. They kept playing in my head, over and over, like a song I couldn't turn off. I'd left, but it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like I'd lost something I couldn't name. I ended up at the waterfront, the dock stretching out quiet and dark under the city lights. The water lapped against the pilings, a steady rhythm that calmed me a little. I found a bench, sat down, and stared out at the black waves. My suit jacket was wrinkled now, my tie loose, but I didn't care. I was alone, and for the first time that night, it felt right. I thought about calling her, texting her, anything to make her explain. But what would I say? Why'd you pick him over me? Why'd you make me feel like nothing? I pulled my phone out, stared at her name in my contacts, and then shoved it back in my pocket. She hadn't cared enough to stop me from walking out. Why should I be the one to reach out? The wind picked up, tugging at my hair, and I let it. I let the cold sink in, let the silence wrap around me. I didn't want to feel warm or safe right now. I wanted to feel this. 2 hours passed. I checked my watch at some point, saw it was past midnight. My phone buzzed once, then twice. It was her. Where are you? The first text said, Grant, answer me. The second one read, No, I'm sorry. No, I messed up. Just demands. I didn't reply. What was there to say? She'd told me to leave, and I had. I wasn't ready to hear her voice, to let her spin this into something small when it felt so big. I stood up, my legs stiff from sitting too long, and started walking again. Home wasn't an option, not tonight. I couldn't face our bed, her perfume on the pillows, the photos of us smiling on the walls. I needed somewhere else, somewhere I could breathe. So I called Owen. He's my oldest friend, the guy who's seen me at my worst and never judged. His voice was groggy when he answered. Grant? You okay? He said. Can I crash at your place? I asked, my throat tight. Yeah, man, come over, he said. No hesitation. That's Owen, steady when I'm falling apart. The cab ride to his apartment was a blur, the city lights streaking past like they were running from me. I paid the driver, climbed the stairs to Owen's place, and knocked. He opened the door in a faded t-shirt, his hair a mess, holding 2 beers. He handed me one without a word, stepped aside, and let me in. His place was small, cluttered with old furniture and stacks of books, but it felt safe. I dropped onto his couch, the springs creaking under me, and took a long sip of the beer. It was cold, bitter, exactly what I needed. Owen sat across from me in an armchair, watching me with those quiet eyes of his. You want to talk? He asked after a minute. I shook my head. Not yet, I said. He nodded, didn't push. That's why I came here, he gets it. He doesn't fill the silence with noise. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling, the beer bottle sweating in my hand. My mind wouldn't stop. I kept seeing Celeste with Jasper, the way she'd looked at him, the way she'd dismissed me. 11 years, and she'd never talked to me like that before. Sure, we'd fought about money, about my long hours at the warehouse, about her late nights at the office, but it was always us against the problem. Tonight felt like her against me. I wondered if this was new, or if I'd just been too blind to see it coming. She'd been different lately, distant, sharper, always talking about work, about Jasper's big ideas. I told myself it was stress, ambition, but maybe it was more. Maybe I'd been a fool to think we were still a team. Owen's snores started up from his room, a low rumble that made me smile despite everything. I finished the beer, set the bottle on the coffee table, and stretched out on the couch. It smelled like dust and old leather, but it was better than our bed tonight. I closed my eyes, but sleep didn't come. Instead, I saw her again, dancing, laughing, telling me to leave. I wondered if she'd even noticed how long I'd been gone before she texted. 2 hours. 2 hours of me wandering, breaking, and she'd been what? Still at the party? Still with him? My phone buzzed again. Another text. Grant, please. I didn't look at it long, just turned the screen off. I didn't owe her an answer, not after that. The night stretched on, the city humming outside Owen's window. I thought about tomorrow, about what I'd do when the sun came up. Go home? Face her? Or stay gone a little longer? I didn't know. All I knew was that I'd walked out of that party, out of her world, and I wasn't sure I could walk back in. Not yet. Maybe not ever. She'd given me 2 options, but I was starting to think there was a third, figuring out who I was without her shadow over me. I pulled a blanket over my shoulders, the weight of it grounding me, and let the darkness settle. For now, this was enough. For now, I was here. I woke up on Owen's couch with a crick in my neck and the taste of last night's beer still in my mouth. My name's Grant Whitaker, 39 years old, and I'd spent the night away from home after my wife, Celeste, turned a company party into a gut punch. The morning light snuck through Owen's blinds, hitting me in the face, and I groaned as I sat up. My phone was on the coffee table, screen dark, but I knew she'd texted again. I didn't check, not yet. I could still hear her voice from last night, sharp and cold. You have 2 options, sit and watch, or leave. I'd left, walked out of that rooftop venue in Seattle like a ghost, and now here I was, crashed at my best friend's place, trying to figure out what came next. Owen shuffled out of his room, scratching his head, and muttered, "Coffee." I nodded, grateful he didn't ask how I was. I wasn't ready to answer that. The smell of brewing coffee filled his small apartment, and I stood up, stretching out the stiffness. My suit jacket was crumpled on the armrest, my tie a mess beside it. I looked like I'd been through a fight, and maybe I had, just not the kind with fists. Owen handed me a mug, black and steaming, and I took it, letting the warmth seep into my hands. You going home today? He asked, leaning against the counter. I stared into the coffee, watching the surface ripple. Yeah, I said finally. She called. I need to hear what she's got to say. He raised an eyebrow but didn't push. You sure? He said. I wasn't, but I nodded anyway. I couldn't hide here forever. I had to face her, even if it tore me up all over again. The drive home was quiet, just the hum of my truck and the occasional honk from the city traffic. My phone buzzed a few times, Celeste again. Grant, please come home, one said. I'm sorry I freaked out, another. No mention of Jasper, no real apology for what she'd said. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my knuckles white. I didn't know what I'd find when I walked through our door. Tears, excuses, or more of that cold edge she'd shown last night. I pulled into our driveway, the house looking the same as always. Red brick, neat lawn, the place we'd bought together 8 years ago. It felt different now, like it belonged to someone else. I sat there for a minute, engine off, steeling myself. Then I got out and went inside. She was in the kitchen when I walked in, her hair messy, still in her pajamas. She looked up from her coffee, and her face lit up with relief. Grant, she said, standing fast, like she might hug me. I held up a hand, stopping her. Don't, I said, my voice rougher than I meant it to be. She froze, her eyes wide, and I dropped my keys on the counter. We need to talk, I said. She nodded quick, too quick, and sat back down. I stayed standing, leaning against the wall, arms crossed. The air between us was thick, heavy with everything unsaid. Where were you? She asked, her voice small. Owen's, I said. After I left the party. You know, when you told me to. Her face flushed, and she looked down at her mug. I didn't mean it like that, she said. I laughed, short and bitter. How'd you mean it, then? She took a breath, fiddling with the handle of her cup. I was drunk, Grant. The wine, the music, it got to me. I didn't think you'd take it so hard. I stared at her, waiting for more, but that was it. That's your excuse? I said. You were dancing with Jasper like I wasn't even there. You humiliated me in front of everyone, and all you've got is, I was drunk. Her head snapped up, and I saw a flash of that sharpness from last night. It was just a dance, she said. You're making it bigger than it is. You embarrassed me by storming out like that. I couldn't believe it. She was turning this on me. I embarrassed you? I said, stepping closer. You told me to sit and watch her leave. Like I'm some dog you can order around. What was I supposed to do, Celeste? She stood up now, her chair scraping the floor. I didn't mean it that way. You're twisting it. Jasper's my boss, Grant. It's a company thing. You don't get how it works. I clenched my fists, trying to keep my voice steady. I get that he had his hands all over you, and you didn't care how it looked, how it made me feel. She rolled her eyes, rolled her damn eyes, and that set me off. Don't do that, I snapped. Don't act like I'm crazy for caring. Why'd you say it, huh? Why'd you tell me to leave? She crossed her arms, mirroring me, and for a second, we just glared at each other. I was mad, she said finally. You came over all jealous, interrupting us. I just wanted you to back off. Back off. I echoed. I'm your husband, Celeste. Not some guy crashing your night. You picked him over me right there, and you don't even see it. She opened her mouth, then closed it, like she didn't know what to say. It wasn't about picking anyone, she said, quieter now. It was a stupid moment. I'm sorry, okay? I didn't want you to leave. I searched her face, looking for something real, something I could hold on to. But all I saw was her trying to smooth this over, like I was a problem she could fix with a few words. You didn't stop me, I said. 2 hours, Celeste. I was gone 2 hours before you even texted. What were you doing? Her silence said too much. She looked away, biting her lip, and I knew she'd stayed at that party, probably still laughing with Jasper while I was breaking apart by the water. I thought you'd come back, she mumbled. I didn't think you'd just go. I shook my head, feeling the weight of it all crash down. You didn't think about me at all, I said. That's the problem. She reached for me then, her hand hovering, but I stepped back. Grant, please, she said, her voice cracking. I messed up. Let's fix this. I wanted to believe her, wanted to let her tears pull me in. But I couldn't. Not yet. I need answers, I said. Not excuses. What's going on with you and Jasper? Tell me the truth. She flinched, like I'd hit her, and sat down hard. Nothing's going on, she said. He's my boss. That's it. You're blowing this up because you don't trust me. I leaned down, meeting her eyes. I don't trust you because you gave me a reason not to. Last night wasn't nothing. Don't lie to me. She didn't answer, just stared back, and I straightened up. I'm not doing this right now, I said. I need to think. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. Grant, wait, she called, but I didn't stop. I walked out, the same way I'd left the party, feeling like a stranger in my own life. She didn't follow, and that told me more than her words ever could. I drove away from our house with no real plan, just the hum of my truck and the ache in my chest keeping me company. My name's Grant Whitaker, 39 years old, and I'm starting to see cracks in my marriage I'd ignored for too long. After Celeste's half-answers this morning, her excuses about the party, her dancing with Jasper Klein, her boss, I couldn't stay in that kitchen with her. She'd said it was nothing, just a dance, but her words felt hollow, like she was managing me instead of facing me. I'd walked out again, not because I wanted to run, but because I needed air, space to think. The city blurred past my windows, all gray buildings and wet streets, and I ended up at Owen's again. He's my rock, the guy who doesn't flinch when I show up a mess. I parked, climbed the stairs, and knocked. He opened the door, took one look at me, and said, "Back already?" I stepped inside, dropping onto his couch like it was home now. He didn't ask much, just grabbed us both a couple of sodas from his fridge and sat across from me. The fizz of the can opening was the only sound for a minute. Talk to her, I said finally, staring at the bubbles in my drink. Didn't go well. Owen leaned back, his face calm but his eyes sharp. What did she say? He asked. I took a sip, the cold biting my throat. Said it was just a dance. That I overreacted. Blamed the wine, the stress, me leaving. No real sorry in it. He nodded slow, like he was piecing it together. And you don't buy it, he said. It wasn't a question. Nope, I said. She didn't even care I was gone 2 hours last night. Kept saying I embarrassed her by walking out. Like I'm the problem here. Owen rubbed his jaw, thinking. He's not big on words, but when he talks, it sticks. You ever hear anything about this Jasper guy? He asked. I shrugged. Just what she's told me. Big shot CEO, runs her company, always got some grand plan she's raving about. Why? He set his soda down, leaning forward. Heard his name before, he said. Not from you. From a buddy of mine, works at a firm downtown. Said Jasper's got a reputation. My stomach tightened. What kind? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. Owen's eyes met mine, steady. Likes to get close to the women he works with. Real close. People talk, say he's smooth, knows how to play it off as business. But it's a pattern. I sat there, letting that sink in. A pattern. I thought about Celeste, how she'd light up talking about him, his ideas, his charm, how he gets her work. I'd always chalked it up to her loving her job, being proud of what she did. But now, with Owen's words hanging in the air, it felt different. She's always defended him, I said, more to myself than him. Anytime I'd ask about late nights, meetings running over, she'd say he's just intense about the company. That I wouldn't get it. Owen didn't say anything, just watched me connect the dots. I ran a hand through my hair, feeling the weight of it. You think she's part of that pattern? I asked, my voice low. He shrugged. Don't know her like you do. But if he's got a type, and she's brushing you off. He didn't finish, didn't need to. I stood up, pacing the small room, my boots scuffing the worn carpet. I thought back, months, maybe a year, of little things I'd let slide. Her coming home late, smelling like wine and perfume I didn't recognize. Her phone buzzing at odd hours, her quick, it's just work, when I'd ask. The way she'd snap if I pushed, like I was the one out of line. And last night, Jasper's hand on her waist, her laughing like I wasn't there. It wasn't just a dance. It was a spotlight on everything I'd been too dumb or too scared to see. This isn't new, I said, stopping by the window, looking out at the gray day. She's been pulling away, and I didn't call it out. Owen cracked his knuckles, a habit when he's thinking hard. You're not wrong to feel off about it, he said. That party? She didn't just dance with him. She told you where you stand. That's not a one-off. I turned, leaning against the sill. She said I don't trust her, I said. Maybe I didn't. But now I'm wondering if I should have stopped trusting her a while ago. He nodded, sipping his soda. Trust a two-way thing. She's got to give you a reason to keep it. I laughed, dry and tired. Yeah, well, she's not. She's giving me reasons to doubt. I sat back down, my head spinning. I pictured her with Jasper, not just last night, but all those times she'd come home glowing, talking about some meeting or dinner. I'd ask how her day was, and she'd give me bits and pieces, always circling back to him. Jasper said this, Jasper thinks that. I'd nod, smile, think it was harmless. But Owen's words, pattern, reputation, made it uglier. I wasn't some jealous guy making up stories. I was a husband watching his wife drift into someone else's orbit. I've been in the shadows, I said, the realization hitting hard. She's been pushing me there, and I let her. Owen tilted his head. So what now? He asked. I didn't have an answer, not a clear one. I don't know, I said. I can't go back like nothing's changed. But I can't just walk away either. Not yet. He leaned back, giving me space to think. You don't have to decide today, he said. But you gotta see it for what it is. She's not the only one with power here. That stuck with me. Power. She'd used hers last night, telling me to sit or leave, like I didn't matter. But I had power to call it out, to demand more, or to walk for good. I stayed at Owen's a while longer, sipping my soda, letting the quiet settle my nerves. The more I thought, the clearer it got. This wasn't about one night. It was about months of her choosing her world over ours, of me fading while she shone brighter with him. I didn't know if she'd crossed a line with Jasper, not for sure. But I knew she'd crossed one with me. I'd been blind, letting her dismiss my worries, letting her make me small. No more. I finished my drink, looking cold and empty in my hand. Thanks, man, I said to Owen. He nodded. Anytime. I stood, grabbing my keys. I wasn't going home yet, but I wasn't staying lost either. I had to figure out what I wanted and what I wouldn't take anymore. I left Owen's place with my head still buzzing, the weight of everything pressing down like a storm I couldn't outrun. My name's Grant Whitaker, 39 years old, and I'm a man who's just starting to see how far my marriage has slipped. After talking with Owen, Hearing about Jasper Klein's reputation and piecing together Celeste's slow drift away from me, I knew I couldn't go home, not to stay, not yet. Last night at the company party, she danced with her boss like I was nothing, told me to sit and watch her leave, and this morning's confrontation only made it worse. Her excuses, her half apologies, they didn't fix the hole she'd punched through us. I needed space, real space, to figure out what I felt and what I'd do about it. So I drove, not to our house, but to a short-term rental I'd found online. A small apartment a few miles away, close enough to not feel like I was running, far enough to breathe. The place was basic, one bedroom, a kitchenette, a couch that looked like it had seen better days. I signed the lease with a guy who barely looked up from his phone, handed over a deposit, and hauled my duffel bag inside. It was just some clothes, my toothbrush, a few things I'd grabbed from home before I left her standing in the kitchen. The walls were beige, the air smelled faintly of bleach, but it was mine for now. I dropped onto the couch, staring at the ceiling, and let the quiet sink in. My phone buzzed, Celeste again. "Grant, let's talk," the text said. Then another, "Come home, please." I didn't answer. She'd said plenty this morning, and none of it changed what I'd seen, what I'd felt. Her dancing with Jasper, her hand lingering on him, her laughing like I wasn't there. It played on a loop in my head, and I couldn't shake it. I unpacked my bag, hanging shirts in the tiny closet, trying to keep my hands busy so my mind wouldn't spiral. But it did anyway. 11 years with her, 11 years of mornings together, of fights and making up, of building a life I thought was solid. Now I was here, alone in a rented room, because she'd made me feel like I didn't belong in hers. I thought about calling Owen, but he'd already done enough, letting me crash, listening to me vent. This was on me now. I walked to the window, looking out at the street below, cars rolling by, people living their lives. I wondered if any of them felt as lost as I did, if any of them had watched their wife choose someone else right in front of them. My phone kept buzzing, more texts piling up. "I didn't mean what I said," she wrote. "It was a mistake." Then, "Jasper's just my boss, Grant. Nothing more." I read them, one by one, feeling the anger bubble up again. She didn't deny the dance, didn't deny the words she'd thrown at me, just kept saying it meant nothing. But I remembered her eyes that night, bright, alive, locked on him in a way they hadn't been on me in months. Her hand on his shoulder, his arm around her waist, the way she'd moved with him. It wasn't nothing. It was everything. I tossed the phone onto the couch, not ready to reply. I didn't trust myself to keep it calm, and I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of a fight she could twist. I went to work instead, needing something normal to hold on to. I manage a warehouse downtown, nothing fancy, but it's steady, forklifts humming, boxes moving, guys who don't ask too many questions. I threw myself into it, checking inventory, barking orders, keeping my hands and head busy. The crew noticed I was off. Mike, one of the older guys, clapped me on the shoulder and said, "Rough night, boss." I forced a grin. Something like that. They didn't push, and I was glad. Work was my anchor, the one place I still felt like me. But even there, she crept in. Memories of her texting me during breaks, asking about my day. That hadn't happened in a while. I'd been too busy to notice. Or maybe I'd just stopped expecting it. Days turned into a week. I settled into the apartment, bought some groceries, made it livable. Celeste's texts kept coming, a mix of pleading and frustration. "I miss you," one said. "Why won't you answer?" another. I didn't, not because I wanted to punish her, but because I didn't know what to say. Every time I thought about her, I saw Jasper's smirk, heard her voice telling me to leave. I started running in the mornings, pounding the pavement near the apartment, letting the burn in my legs drown out the noise in my head. I'd pass couples walking dogs, laughing, and it had hit me. Celeste and I used to be like that, before her job, before him. I wondered when we'd stopped. One night, I sat on the couch with a beer, staring at a crack in the wall. I thought about her claim. Jasper's just her boss, nothing more. Maybe she believed it. Maybe she didn't see how she'd changed, how she'd leaned into his world and left me behind. But I saw it. Owen's words about Jasper's reputation stuck with me. Smooth, close to the women he worked with, a pattern. I didn't know if she'd crossed that line, if it was more than dancing, more than attention. I didn't have proof, just a gut feeling that wouldn't quit. And that was enough to keep me here, away from her, rebuilding the walls she'd torn down. I started sleeping better, the strange bed feeling less strange. Work kept me grounded, and I found myself talking more with the guys, cracking jokes, feeling lighter. But Celeste was still there, a shadow I couldn't shake. Her last text came late one night. "I'm sorry, Grant. I didn't see what I was doing to you." It was the closest she'd come to owning it, and it stopped me cold. I held the phone, thumb hovering over the keys, wanting to write back. But what would I say? Sorry's not enough? I don't know if I believe you. I set it down instead, unfinished. I wasn't ready to let her in, not when I was finally finding my footing without her. The separation wasn't permanent, not yet. I hadn't decided what I wanted long-term. But for now, it was right. I needed this, space to think, to feel something besides hurt and doubt. I'd spent too long in her orbit, letting her pull me where she wanted. Now I was standing still, figuring out my own gravity. I finished my beer, the bottle cold against my lips, and looked around the little apartment. It wasn't home, not really, but it was mine. And for the first time in a while, that felt like enough. I didn't know what came next, her, us, or just me. But I'd find out on my terms, not hers. I was sitting at my desk, staring at a stack of invoices I hadn't touched, when she walked in. "My name's Grant Whitaker, 39 years old, and I've been living in a rented apartment for a couple of weeks now, trying to make sense of my marriage after Celeste turned a company party into a breaking point. I'm a warehouse manager, and my office is a cramped room off the main floor, all concrete walls and flickering lights. It's not much, but it's where I've been hiding out, keeping my head down, focusing on work instead of her." That afternoon, the door creaked open, and there she was, Celeste, my wife, standing in the doorway like a ghost I wasn't ready to face. Her eyes were red, her makeup smudged, her hair pulled back messy. She looked like she'd been crying, and it threw me off. I hadn't seen her like this in years. "Grant," she said, her voice shaky, stepping inside without asking. I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed, not saying a word. The hum of the warehouse, forklifts beeping, guys shouting filtered through the walls, but in here, it was just us and the tension. She closed the door behind her, the click loud in the quiet, and stood there, clutching her purse like it was a lifeline. "Can we talk?" she asked. I didn't move, didn't make it easy. "You're here," I said, flat. "Talk." She swallowed hard, her eyes darting around the room, my desk, the old coffee mug, the calendar pinned to the wall, anywhere but me. Then she took a breath and started. "I'm sorry," she said, the words spilling out fast. "I've been a mess since you left the party. I didn't realize what I'd done until you were gone, not just last night, but all of it. I've been awful to you, Grant, and I hate myself for it." I watched her, waiting for the catch. She texted apologies before, little stabs at fixing things, but this was different. She was here, raw, falling apart. "I saw it the second you walked out," she went on, her voice cracking. "How I made you feel. I didn't mean to, I swear I didn't, but I did. And I'm so sorry." She stepped closer, her hands twisting the strap of her purse. "I forgot what we were. I got caught up in work and feeling important, and I pushed you away." I stayed quiet, letting her words hang there. My chest tightened, memories flashing, her dancing with Jasper, her cold sit and watch her leave, the way she'd brushed me off the next morning. Now she was here, saying she saw it, saying she was sorry. Part of me wanted to believe her, to grab onto this and pull us back together. But another part, the part that had been sleeping on a lumpy couch, running alone in the mornings, didn't trust it. "What changed?" I asked, my voice low. "You didn't care when I left. 2 hours, Celeste, and you didn't even notice. Why now?" She flinched, like I'd slapped her, and looked down at the floor. "It wasn't that I didn't care," she said, quieter. "I was mad, stupid, caught up in the moment. I thought you'd come back, that we'd fight it out like always. When you didn't, when you stayed gone, I panicked. And then you moved out, and I—" She trailed off, tears spilling over now, and wiped her face with her sleeve. "I know I messed up, Grant. Not just the party, but before. With Jasper." That name hit me like a jolt, and I sat up straighter. "What about him?" I said, sharper than I meant. She met my eyes finally, hers wet and scared. "He's got a reputation," she said. "I knew it, everyone does. He's flirty, pushy, but I told myself it was harmless. I liked it. The attention, the way he made me feel powerful, seen. I used it, and I didn't see how it hurt you." I stared at her, my jaw tight. Owen's words echoed, Jasper's pattern, getting close to women at work. She was admitting it now, not the dance, but the months of leaning into him, of letting him matter more than me. You made me invisible, I said, the words cutting through the air. You laughed with him, danced with him, and told me to deal with it. You don't get to say you didn't see it. She nodded, fast, like she couldn't argue. I know, she said. I was selfish. I wanted to feel big, and I didn't care what it did to you. I see it now, and I hate it. I hate who I've been. She stepped closer, reaching out, but stopped when she saw my face. I'm not asking you to forgive me today, she said. I just needed you to know. I didn't move, didn't soften. Her tears were real. Her voice broke in all the right places, but it felt late, too late. You like the power, I said, repeating her words. What about me? Where was I in that? You didn't just forget us, Celeste. You chose him over me, right there, in front of everyone. She shook her head, desperate. It wasn't a choice like that. It was stupid, thoughtless. I wasn't thinking about you, and I should have been. I know I should have. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, looking up at her. You told me to leave, I said. You stood there with him and said it. What was I supposed to do? She didn't answer, just cried harder, her shoulders shaking. The room felt smaller, the air thick with her regret and my anger. I wanted to yell, to shake her, to make her feel what I'd felt that night, standing there, watching her with him, fading into nothing. But I didn't. I sat back, hands clasped, and let her stand there, exposed. I've been trying to figure out who I am without you, I said, slow. Because you made me feel like I didn't matter. And now you're sorry. She nodded, wiping her face again. I am, she said. I don't expect you to believe me yet. But I'll show you, Grant. I'll do whatever it takes. I didn't respond, just watched her, the woman I'd loved for 11 years, breaking down in my dingy office. She stayed a few minutes more, rambling about how she'd changed, how she'd cut Jasper out of her life, how she'd missed me. I listened, but I didn't give her anything back, not a nod, not a word. When she ran out of steam, she looked at me, waiting. I should go, she said finally, her voice small. I nodded once, and she turned, opening the door. I love you, she whispered, almost too quiet to hear, then left. The door clicked shut, and I was alone again, the invoices still untouched, the hum of the warehouse filling the silence. I sat there a long time, her words spinning in my head. She was sorry, really sorry, maybe for the first time. She'd admitted to Jasper's pull, to using him, to making me invisible. It was more than I'd gotten before, more than texts or excuses. But it didn't erase the hurt, didn't rebuild the trust she'd shattered. I picked up a pin, twirled it in my fingers, and thought about what she'd said, how she'd show me. I didn't know if I wanted her to, if I could let her try. The apology was hers, but the choice was mine, and I wasn't ready to make it. Not yet. I left the warehouse after Celeste's visit, her tear-streaked face and broken apologies still rattling around in my head. My name's Grant Whitaker, 39 years old, and I've been living apart from my wife for weeks now, trying to untangle the mess she made of us at that company party. She'd shown up at my office today, raw and desperate, admitting she'd chased Jasper's attention, made me invisible, and lost sight of what we had. It was the most honest she'd been in months, maybe years, but it didn't fix anything, not yet. I drove away from work, not to my rented apartment, but out to the trails we used to walk together, back when things were simpler. The sun was dipping low, painting the sky orange, and I needed to be somewhere that wasn't hers or mine, just ours, or what used to be. I parked near Lake Washington, where the paths wind through trees and the air smells like pine and water. My boots crunched on the gravel as I started walking, hands in my pockets, the cool breeze tugging at my jacket. This was our spot. Years ago, me and Celeste, before her job took over, before Jasper Klein strutted into our lives. We'd come here on weekends, sometimes with Duke, our rescue mutt, his tail wagging like crazy as he chased sticks into the shallows. I could still hear her laughing, see her tossing a ball, her hair wild in the wind. Those days felt like another life now, shadows of a marriage I wasn't sure I could get back. I kept moving, the trail stretching out ahead, and let my mind wander to the good stuff, the stuff I'd buried under all this hurt. We'd met at a bar, 12 years ago. Me, a guy hauling boxes for a living, her, a grad student with big dreams and a sharp tongue. She'd spilled her drink on me by accident, laughed, and bought me a beer to make up for it. That was Celeste, bold, quick, pulling me in before I knew what hit me. We'd married a year later, small ceremony, just family and Owen, promising to stick it out no matter what. And we had, for a while. I thought about the mornings she'd bring me coffee in bed, black and strong, teasing me about snoring. Or the nights we'd argue over what movie to rent, her pushing some artsy thing, me wanting action, ending up tangled on the couch either way. That was us, messy, real good. I stopped by the water, the lake lapping at the shore, and sat on a bench we'd claimed once, carving our initials into the wood like kids. They were still there, faded but legible, G and C. I traced them with my finger, feeling the grooves, and wondered when we'd lost that version of ourselves. Was it her job, climbing the corporate ladder, turning her into someone who needed Jasper's spotlight? Or was it me, too comfortable, not seeing her drift? I pulled out a notebook I'd started carrying, something to dump my thoughts into since I moved out. I scribbled a line, "When did she stop being mine?" and stared at it, the ink smudging under my thumb. I didn't have an answer, just a hollow ache. Duke came to mind, our dog who died last year. He was the last thing we'd really shared, grieving him together, holding each other when the vet called it. She'd cried into my shirt, and I'd felt needed, strong for her. After that, it was like we'd drifted into parallel lives, her with work, me with the warehouse, passing each other like ships. I wrote that down too. Duke was our glue, and let the memory sit. I missed him, his sloppy kisses, the way he'd nudge my hand for a scratch. I missed her too, the her from back then, not the one who'd danced with Jasper and told me to leave. The trail was quiet now, just me and the rustling leaves, and I kept walking, letting the past wash over me. I thought about the little things, her humming in the kitchen, burning toast because she'd get distracted, me fixing it, and kissing her anyway. The way she'd steal my flannels in winter, laughing when I'd pretend to fight her for them. We'd built something, a life full of quirks and warmth, and I didn't know how it had turned cold. I stopped again, leaning against a tree, the bark rough under my palms. Jasper wasn't the start of it, I realized. He was the symptom. She'd been pulling away before him, chasing something I couldn't give her, something bigger than our quiet days. I'd let her, too busy or too blind to fight for us. I wrote that down. I didn't see her leaving, and felt the truth of it settle in my gut. The sun was gone now, the sky bruising purple, and I kept moving, the trail looping back toward my truck. I thought about her apology today, how she'd stood there in my office, tears falling, saying she'd used Jasper to feel powerful, that she'd made me invisible. It was real, her regret, but it didn't erase the months, years, maybe, of distance. I didn't know if I could bridge it, if I wanted to. I loved her, still, somewhere deep, but I didn't love who she'd become, all sharp edges and corporate shine. I wrote another line. I miss her, not this, and closed the notebook, tucking it into my jacket. The air was colder now, biting at my face, and I welcomed it, let it wake me up. I got back to my truck, the lot empty except for me, and sat inside without starting it. I stared out at the dark trees, thinking about what we'd had, what we'd lost. Duke's death was a marker, I decided. The last time we'd been us, really us. After that, she'd thrown herself into work, into Jasper's world, and I'd let the warehouse swallow me. We'd stopped talking, stopped fighting even, just coasting until that party blew it all open. I didn't hate her, not yet, but I hated what we'd let happen. I started the engine, the rumble loud in the silence, and drove back to my apartment, the notebook heavy in my pocket. When I got there, I dropped onto the couch, the springs creaking, and flipped through what I'd written. Shadows of a marriage, bits of us scattered across pages, good and bad. I didn't know if we could rebuild, if those old days were gone for good. Her apology lingered, a crack of light, but it wasn't enough to pull me back. I set the notebook down, grabbed a beer from the fridge, and sat in the dark, the city humming outside. I missed her, the real her, the one who'd carved initials with me, who'd loved me without needing someone else's eyes. But that Celeste felt far away, and I didn't know if I could find her again. For now, I was here, alone, holding on to memories and wondering if they were all I'd have left. I was pouring coffee into a chipped mug at my apartment when my phone buzzed with a new text from Celeste. My name's Grant Whitaker, 39 years old, and I've been living apart from my wife for weeks now, wrestling with the fallout of her dancing with her boss, Jasper Klein, at that damn company party. She'd come to my office a few days ago, all tears and apologies, admitting she'd chased his attention and pushed me out of her life. It was raw, real, but I hadn't known what to do with it, still didn't. The text read, "I've been seeing a therapist. Alone. I'd like you to come to a session with me. Please." I set the mug down, the steam curling up, and stared at the words. Therapy. It wasn't a word we'd ever tossed around before, not seriously. I didn't answer right away, just let it sit there, heavy on the counter next to my keys. I spent the morning at work, moving boxes, checking schedules, keeping my hands busy so my head wouldn't take over. The warehouse was loud, forklifts whining, guys laughing, and it kept me grounded. But her text gnawed at me. She was trying. I give her that. Going to therapy alone, reaching out. It wasn't just words this time, it was action. I thought about the trails I'd walked the other day, the memories of us I'd dug up, the way we used to be. Could we get there again? Did I want to? By lunch, I'd made up my mind. I texted back, "Okay. When?" She replied fast, "Tomorrow, 3 p.m. and sent an address. I nodded to myself, like I'd signed a contract, and went back to work, the decision settling like a stone in my gut. The next day, I drove to the therapist's office, a plain building downtown with too many windows. I parked, checked my watch 2:50, and sat there, gripping the steering wheel. I didn't know what I'd say, what I'd hear. Celeste's truck was already there, and I pictured her inside, waiting, maybe as nervous as me. I got out, locked the door, and walked in, my boots loud on the tile. The receptionist pointed me to a room down the hall, and I knocked once before stepping inside. Celeste was on a couch, legs crossed, looking smaller than usual. A woman, mid-50s, glasses, kind eyes, sat in an armchair, notepad in her lap. "Grant," she said, standing. "I'm Dr. Ellis." I nodded, shook her hand, and sat in the chair across from Celeste. She gave me a weak smile, her fingers twisting together. Dr. Ellis started, calm and steady. "Celeste asked you here because she's been working on herself, and she wants to include you in that. I'm here to help you both talk. No pressure, just what you're comfortable with." I glanced at Celeste, her eyes on me, waiting. "Okay," I said, leaning back, arms crossed. Dr. Ellis nodded. "Celeste, why don't you start?" She took a breath, uncrossed her legs, and looked at me straight. "I was cruel," she said, her voice low. "That night at the party, I humiliated you. I danced with Jasper, said those things, sit and watch her leave, and I didn't care how it hit you. I've been replaying it, hating myself for it. I'm sorry, Grant. Really sorry." I felt my throat tighten, her words digging into the raw spots I'd been carrying. "You didn't just humiliate me," I said, slow, keeping my eyes on her. "You made me feel like I didn't exist, like I was nothing to you. I stood there, watching you with him, and you told me to deal with it. What was I supposed to do with that?" She flinched, tears welling up, but she didn't look away. "Nothing," she said. "You shouldn't have had to do anything. I was wrong, selfish, stupid. I used Jasper to feel something, to escape the routine, and I didn't see what I was doing to us." Dr. Ellis scribbled something, then looked at me. "How did that feel, Grant, hearing her say that?" I shifted, the chair creaking under me. "It's what she said at my office," I said. "That she wanted his attention, his power. It's honest, I guess. But it doesn't change how it felt, standing there, fading while she laughed with him. I've been trying to figure out if I can trust her again." Celeste wiped her eyes, quick, like she didn't want me to see. "I don't blame you," she said. "I broke that trust. I've been working here, with Dr. Ellis, to understand why I did it, why I needed that escape. It wasn't about you, Grant. It was me, feeling stuck, chasing something dumb." Dr. Ellis leaned in. "Can you tell him more about that, Celeste?" She nodded, swallowing hard. "I got bored," she said. "Not of you of us, the everyday stuff. Work was exciting, Jasper was exciting, and I let it pull me away. I didn't cheat, not like that, but I let him matter too much. I see it now, and I hate it." I stared at her, the words sinking in. Bored. It stung, but it fit, her late nights, her glow when she talked about him. "You could have told me," I said, my voice rough. "Instead of running to him. We could have fixed it." She nodded, tears spilling now. "I know. I was a coward. I didn't want to face it." The room got quiet, just her soft crying and the tick of a clock somewhere. Dr. Ellis broke it. "Grant, what do you need from her now?" I looked at Celeste, her face open, waiting. "I need to know I'm not invisible," I said. "That if we do this, you choose me, not him, not work, me. I can't be the guy you settle for." She reached out, then stopped, her hand hovering. "You're not," she said. "You never were. I lost sight of that, but I see you now. I'll prove it, if you let me." I didn't take her hand. didn't move, just let her words settle. Dr. Ellis watched us, then said, "This is a start. Maybe space, but not silence, could help." Thoughts? I nodded, slow. Yeah, space, but talking. I'm not ready to come home, but I'm here. Celeste's face softened, a flicker of hope in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. The session ended awkward, us standing, her hugging me quick, me stiff but not pulling away. I left first, the air outside cool against my face, and drove back to my apartment, replaying it all. She'd owned it, her cruelty, her escape, her regret. I'd said my piece, let her see the hurt. We'd cried, both of us, and it wasn't fixed, but it was something. I sat on my couch that night, a beer in hand, the session looping in my mind. She was trying therapy, honesty, facing me. I didn't know if I could let her back in, if the trust could grow again. But I'd gone, I'd listened, and that was my choice, not sitting, not leaving, but stepping in. The door wasn't shut, just ajar, and I'd see where it led. For now, that was enough. I was at my apartment, flipping through a takeout menu I'd already memorized, when the news broke. My name's Grant Whitaker, 39 years old, and I've been separated from my wife, Celeste, for weeks now, ever since she danced with her boss, Jasper Klein, at that company party and told me to sit or leave. We'd started talking again, therapy, awkward hugs, her trying to show me she'd changed, but I was still here, in this rented space, figuring out if I could trust her. That night, I'd left the TV on low, some background noise to fill the quiet, when a headline caught my eye. I grabbed the remote, turned up the volume, and there it was, luxury brand CEO Jasper Klein under investigation for misconduct. My stomach flipped. I sat down hard on the couch, the menu forgotten, and watched. The reporter's voice was crisp, cutting through the hum of my fridge. 3 women from Celeste's company had come forward, accusing Jasper of inappropriate behavior, unwanted advances, late-night texts, pressure masked his mentorship. The screen flashed his photo, that slick smile I'd seen up close at the party, and I felt a rush of something: anger, vindication, maybe relief. Owen had warned me about his reputation, and Celeste had admitted she'd leaned into his attention, but this was bigger. This was proof, out in the open, that he wasn't just some charming boss. I muted the TV, the silence heavy, and grabbed my phone. I didn't call her, not yet, just scrolled X, where people were already posting. Knew he was a creep, one said. About time, another. I set the phone down, my hands restless, and waited for what she'd do. The next morning, my phone buzzed early. "Celeste, did you see the news?" Her text read. "Can we talk?" I stared at it, the coffee I'd brewed going cold. "Yeah," I typed back. "Come over." She showed up an hour later, knocking soft, like she wasn't sure I'd let her in. I opened the door, and she stepped inside, her face pale, her eyes tired. She didn't sit, just stood by the counter, arms wrapped around herself. "It's true," she said, no preamble. "What they're saying about Jasper." I didn't know. Well, I didn't know it was that bad. But I'm not surprised. I leaned against the wall, watching her. "You worked with him every day," I said. "You didn't see it?" She shook her head, fast. "I saw pieces. The flirting, the way he'd linger. I thought it was just him being him. I didn't think." She trailed off, and I crossed my arms. "You didn't think he'd cross lines?" I said, sharper than I meant. "Or you didn't care, long as it wasn't you?" Her eyes snapped to mine, hurt flashing there. "No," she said. "I cared. I told myself it was normal, part of the job. He never tried anything with me, Grant, I swear. But I knew he was off. I should have said something." I nodded slow, letting that sink in. "You danced with him," I said. "You let him close. You liked it." She didn't deny it, just looked down, her fingers digging into her sleeves. "Yeah," she whispered. "I did. And I'm ashamed of it now." We stood there, the air thick between us. I wanted to believe her, that she hadn't known the full scope, that she hadn't been part of it. But I remembered Owen's words, Jasper's pattern, and her own admission about chasing his power. "What are you going to do?" I asked finally. She took a breath, straightening up. "I gave a statement," she said. "To HR, the investigators. I told them what I saw. Small things, comments, times he pushed boundaries with me and others. I'm not proud I stayed quiet so long. But I'm done with that." I raised an eyebrow. "You're turning on him?" She met my gaze, steady. "I'm telling the truth. He's not who I thought he was. Or maybe he is, and I was too blind to care." I didn't know what to say to that. Part of me wanted to cheer Jasper exposed, her stepping up, But another part stung, knowing she'd been tangled in his world so deep. And the job? I asked. She sighed, leaning against the counter. I quit. Yesterday, before this broke. I couldn't stay. Not after everything, not just him. But me, what I let happen. I need a fresh start. I blinked, surprised. She loved that job, thrived on it. You sure? I said. She nodded, a small, sad smile tugging her lips. Yeah. It's not about impressing you, Grant. It's about me. I lost myself there. I'm trying to find her again. I watched her, the way she stood there, not begging, just being. She wasn't the Celeste from the party, sharp, dismissive, or even the one from therapy, desperate to fix us. This was someone else, someone stripped down, starting over. You think this changes things? I asked, my voice low. With us? She shrugged, uncertain. I hope it shows you I'm serious. I don't expect you to run back. But I want you to see I'm not that person anymore, the one who hurt you. I didn't answer, just let her words settle. The TV flickered in the corner, still muted, Jasper's face gone now, replaced by some ad. She stayed a while, talking about the statement, how she'd sat with HR, detailed every late meeting, every too friendly remark. She wasn't one of the 3 women accusing him, but her words backed them up, added weight. I should have done it sooner, she said, her voice breaking. For them, for me. I nodded, feeling the anger I'd held toward her shift, not gone, but different. She wasn't defending him now, wasn't glowing about his genius. She was tearing it down, piece by piece. You did it now, I said. That's something. She looked at me, I soft. Yeah, it is. When she left, I sat on the couch, the apartment quiet again. I thought about Power, how she'd chased it with him, how it had blinded her to me, to us. This wasn't love, what she'd done, but it wasn't betrayal either, not the way I'd feared. She hadn't slept with him, hadn't crossed that line. I believed her on that. But she'd let him matter more than me, and that was its own kind of cut. Now she was walking away, not just from him, but from that life, and I saw it, her trying, not for me, but for herself. It made her real again, someone I could maybe trust, not today, but someday. I grabbed my notebook, the one I'd been scribbling in, and wrote, she's finding her way back. Am I? I didn't know the answer, but watching Jasper fall, seeing her stand up, it shifted something. Power wasn't love, and she was learning that. Maybe I was too. I set the pen down, the words staring back, and felt a flicker of hope, not big, not loud, but there. I woke up early, the light sneaking through the blinds of my rented apartment, casting thin lines across the floor. My name's Grant Whitaker, 39 years old, and I've been living here for weeks, piecing myself together after Celeste's dance with Jasper Klein at that company party shattered what I thought we had. Yesterday's news, Jasper under investigation, her quitting her job, giving a statement, still echoed in my head. She'd come over, laid it all out, and left me with a quiet hope I wasn't sure what to do with. Today, I decided to go back to the house, not to move in, not yet, but to talk, to see if something worth saving was still there. I showered, pulled on a clean shirt, and drove over, the familiar streets feeling strange under the weight of everything. I pulled into our driveway, the red brick house looking unchanged, lawn trimmed, curtains drawn, like nothing had happened. My key still worked, the lock clicking open, and I stepped inside. The air smelled like her coffee, that floral soap she loved, and it hit me hard, a mix of comfort and ache. Celeste? I called, my voice rough in the quiet. She came out of the kitchen, a mug in her hand, her eyes widening when she saw me. Grant, she said, setting the mug down fast, like she might drop it. You're here. I nodded, staying by the door, hands in my pockets. Yeah, thought we should talk. For real. She gestured to the living room, and we sat, her on the couch, me in the armchair across from her. The space between us felt wider than it was, filled with all the unsaid things from the past weeks. She didn't jump in, didn't plead, just watched me, waiting. I took a breath, letting the words find their way. I saw the news, I started. About Jasper, what you did, quitting, the statement. It's big. She nodded, her fingers tracing the edge of the couch. It was time, she said. I couldn't stay there, not after everything. I needed to cut it clean. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. I see that. And I see you trying therapy, coming to me, owning it. But I'm still figuring out what it means for us. Her face softened, but she didn't cry, didn't push. I know, she said. I don't expect you to just come back. I messed us up. I'll wait as long as you need. That surprised me, her not begging, not rushing me. It was new, this patience, and it made me keep going. That night, I said, when you told me to sit or leave, it wasn't just about Jasper. It was you telling me I didn't matter. I've been living with that, trying to figure out if I can be here again with you, without feeling like that. She looked down, her hands stilling. I hate that I made you feel that, she said. It's the worst thing I've done. I didn't see it then, but I do now. I nodded, the memory still sharp, her with him, her voice cutting through the music, my feet carrying me out. I didn't just leave that night, I said. I left us, in my head, because I didn't know how to stay. But I've been thinking there was a third option. Not sitting, not leaving, but speaking. Telling you I needed to be chosen, respected. I didn't do that. I walked instead. She met my eyes, steady. You're doing it now, she said. And I'm listening. I want to choose you, Grant, if you'll let me. I sat back, letting that land. It wasn't a fix, but it was a start, her hearing me, not fighting back. We talked more about the past, the slow drift before Jasper, the way we let silence grow. She admitted she'd stopped talking to me, scared of rocking the boat, and I on my part, shutting down, not pushing when I should have. We stopped being a team, I said. Duke dying, your job, my work, we let it pull us apart. She nodded, a small smile tugging her lips. He was our glue, wasn't he? I smiled back, faint. Yeah. After him, we didn't know how to stick. It wasn't all tears, some of it was light, remembering dumb fights over dishes, her stealing my socks. But it led us here, to this room, this moment. I'm not moving back, I said finally, firm but calm. Not today. But I'm not done either. Counseling, boundaries, honesty, I'll try that. See where it goes. Her eyes lit up, soft, not pushy. Okay, she said. I'll do it too. Whatever it takes. I stood, and she did too, stepping closer but not too close. It's not a fairy tale, I said. It's messy, and I don't know if we'll make it. But it's honest. She nodded, tears brimming but not falling. Honest is enough for now. And if we dance, it's our music, no one else's. I chuckled. Low? Deal. We didn't hug, didn't rush it, just stood there, letting it settle. I grabbed my keys, heading for the door, and she followed, quiet. See you at therapy? She asked. Yeah, I said, stepping outside. See you. The air was cool, the sky clear, and I drove back to my place, her words in my head, our music. It wasn't perfect, wasn't a movie ending, but it was ours. I parked, sat in my truck, and thought about that third option, speaking, choosing, rebuilding. We'd try it, step by step, and maybe find us again. For now, that was enough. I walked into my wife's office, my heartbeat steady, my steps measured, but my mind was a battlefield of emotions. The air in the office carried the familiar scent of her expensive perfume, a scent I used to love, one that once reminded me of home. Now, it just smelled like power, like control, like deception. It clashed with the sterile scent of the office space, a place I had spent far too many years in, pouring my soul into a company that never truly saw me. Or maybe, they saw me, but they never valued me the way they should have. The city skyline stretched beyond the glass walls, sunlight bouncing off the sleek furniture, making the space look even more impersonal. Everything about her office screamed authority, control, and, right now, victory. I could see it in her posture, the way she sat behind her desk, perfectly manicured fingers laced together as if she had just finished signing a $1 million deal. But it was the smile that caught my attention. It wasn't her usual composed, corporate grin. No, this one was different. Smug, self-satisfied, cruel. She was waiting for me. I let the silence stretch between us for a moment as I closed the door behind me. My pulse was calm, my face unreadable. I had learned a long time ago how to mask emotions, how to keep control even when the ground beneath me was shifting. Congratulations, Jamie, she said, her tone almost playful, as if this was a joke. as if she was about to tell me some unbelievable punchline. Your hard work paid off. I'm promoting my boyfriend, Steve, instead of you. He's more of a team player. The words were a hammer to my chest, a weight that pressed down, sinking deep into the pit of my stomach. But I didn't react. I didn't give her the satisfaction. I simply stood there, absorbing the impact. 5 years. 5 years of sacrifice. 5 years of working long hours, skipping vacations, missing family gatherings. All to build her company, to prove my worth, to create something meaningful. I had put my heart into this job, into this business, into her. And now, she sat across from me, acting as if it had all been a joke. A game. And the worst part? She wasn't even ashamed. Her eyes held no guilt, no hesitation, only triumph. She had planned this, and she expected me to break. Steve. I should have known. Steve, who conveniently climbed the corporate ladder at warp speed. Steve, who laughed too easily, who always seemed to be at the right place at the right time, who somehow dodged responsibility when things went south, but took the credit when they went well. Steve, who was now taking my promotion. I exhaled slowly, not allowing the anger to show on my face. If she was expecting an outburst, she was going to be disappointed. If she wanted me to crumble, to beg, to fight, she was out of her mind. Without a word, I reached into my pocket and pulled out a white envelope. Crisp, clean. It had been in my desk for weeks, ready. I had known, deep down, that something like this was coming. I placed it on her desk, right on top of her pristine stack of reports. I slid it forward with controlled precision, my fingers releasing it with a sense of finality. I understand, I said simply. Here's my resignation letter. The change in her expression was subtle, but I caught it. The slight furrow of her brows, the way her fingers hesitated before reaching for the envelope. She hadn't expected that. She thought she had all the power. She thought she was in control. She thought I needed this job more than they needed me. She thought wrong. I stood there, watching as she peeled the envelope open, her nails tapping softly against the paper. She unfolded the document inside, her eyes scanning the words, at first quickly, then slower, her expression shifting ever so slightly. Her lips parted. Her back stiffened. Her smug confidence wavered. I didn't move. I didn't say anything. I just waited. Because she hadn't just found my resignation letter inside that envelope. She had found something else. A report. A very specific report. One that detailed the revolutionary project management system I had been working on for the past 3 years. A system that streamlined productivity, reduced inefficiencies, and, most importantly, made companies millions. A system that she had ignored. A system that I had patented. 6 months ago. Her fingers trembled slightly as she flipped through the pages, as realization dawned. I watched, almost amused, as she tried to piece it all together. Jamie, she started, her voice softer now, uncertain. I tilted my head slightly, waiting. Why didn't you tell us about this before? She asked. I let out a small, humorless chuckle. I did, I said. 3 times. You dismissed it. Her face paled. She shuffled the papers, her mind racing, trying to find a loophole, trying to regain control of the situation. You patented it, she whispered. 6 months ago, I confirmed. She inhaled sharply. That was when I saw it, the first crack in her armor. The moment she realized she had miscalculated. For years, she had belittled my ideas, pushed me aside, prioritized politics over innovation. And now, she was seeing the consequences. She straightened her shoulders, her voice carefully controlled when she spoke next. Jamie, let's be reasonable. We can match whatever offer you've gotten. Maybe even do better. I laughed. A genuine, full-bodied laugh. Ashley, I said, finally calling her by her name for the first time in this conversation. It's not about money. She opened her mouth to argue, but I didn't let her. It's about respect, I continued. Something I never got here. Her lips pressed together tightly. She knew I was right. I had spent years being overlooked, being used, being underestimated. And now, when she finally realized my worth, it was too late. I buttoned my jacket, adjusting my watch as I took a step back. You and Steve enjoy the promotion, I said smoothly, my voice dripping with finality. I'm sure you'll do great without me. And with that, I turned and walked out of her office. I didn't need to look back to know what was happening. I didn't need to hear her reaction to know that she was panicking. Because in the end, she had played the game wrong. She thought she was getting the last laugh. She thought she had all the power. But what she didn't realize was that I had been playing a game of my own. And now, I was winning. I walked out of my wife's office with my head held high, my stride purposeful, my emotions locked away behind a calm, composed exterior. The office around me buzzed with whispers. Eyes flickered toward me from behind computer screens, from over cubicle walls, from the glass-walled conference rooms where my so-called colleagues were pretending to work but were undoubtedly discussing what had just happened. They all thought I'd be devastated. They thought I would storm out in anger, demand explanations, beg for reconsideration. They thought I would crumble because this job, this position, had been my life. But they were wrong. Because what none of them knew, what even Ashley had failed to realize, was that I had been preparing for this moment for 3 years. This was not the end. It was just the beginning. I walked through the office, past the break room where Steve was probably gloating over his so-called victory, past the HR desk where they would soon process my resignation, past the rows of desks where employees were pretending to work while shooting me sympathetic glances. Let them whisper. Let them think I had lost. They had no idea what was coming. As I reached my desk, I pulled out an empty box and began packing my things. My hands moved methodically, picking up framed photos, a few books, and a couple of personal items that had accumulated over the years. I didn't have much here, just enough to remind me that, at one point, I had actually cared about this place. I had poured my soul into this company, given it everything, spent years trying to build something meaningful, only to be discarded the moment it suited them. But that was their mistake, because while they had been busy playing office politics, I had been working on something far more valuable. I glanced at the thick folder in my bag, the blueprint for the project management system I had spent 3 years perfecting. It was designed to revolutionize workflow efficiency, streamline operations, and eliminate the very problems that companies like Evermark struggled with daily. Ashley had ignored it. Steve had probably never even heard of it. And now I owned it. I had patented it 6 months ago. I had spent countless nights refining it, testing it, improving it, making sure it was perfect. While Ashley and Steve had been busy playing their little games, I had been building something real. And the best part? I already had buyers lined up. I could have launched it under Evermark's name. I could have handed it over to them and changed the entire industry under their brand. But why would I do that? Why would I hand them my masterpiece when they had just proven they didn't value me? No, if they didn't want me, they didn't get my system either. I was taking it somewhere else. As I packed up the last of my things, I heard footsteps approaching. I didn't need to look up to know who it was. Steve. I could feel his presence before he even spoke. That irritating, smug energy of his. The kind that made me want to roll my eyes even when he wasn't saying anything. No hard feelings, buddy, he said, his voice dripping with fake sympathy. I took my time closing my box, making sure every last detail was in place before I finally turned to him. Steve stood there, arms crossed, a ridiculous smirk on his face. The kind of smirk that told me he thought he had won. He had no idea. I tilted my head slightly, studying him. The way he radiated arrogance. The way he carried himself like a man who had earned something when, in reality, he had been handed everything. I smiled at him. Not a forced smile. Not an angry one. A genuine, amused smile. None at all, I said. I'm sure you'll do great. Steve blinked, clearly surprised. He had expected me to be bitter, to lash out, to show some sign that I was broken. But I wasn't. I was free. Steve shrugged, clearly dismissing whatever unease he felt. He probably thought I was just being a good sport. He had no idea. As he walked away, I closed my laptop bag and picked up my box. This chapter of my life was over. But the next one? The next one was going to be legendary. That evening, I sat in my apartment, my laptop open, the dim glow of the screen reflecting off the whiskey glass in my hand. Emails were already flooding in. Investors, industry leaders, people who had heard whispers about my system and were eager to get a piece of it. And then, an email that made my breath still for a moment. Noah Grant, CEO of Westbridge Industries. Westbridge wasn't just another corporation. They were one of the biggest names in the industry. Their reach was global. Their influence? Unmatched. I clicked on the email. Jamie, I heard you left Evermark. We need to talk. Coffee tomorrow. Short, direct, powerful. I leaned back, my mind racing. Westbridge wasn't just a company. It was the company. The kind of place that respected innovation, that nurtured talent, that paid attention. And now, They wanted to talk to me. I picked up my phone and typed out my response. See you at 9. I set my phone down, exhaling slowly, a smirk forming on my lips. Ashley had spent years ignoring my ideas. Now, she was about to see just how big of a mistake that was. She thought Steve's promotion was her victory. She thought pushing me out had secured her future. She thought she had won. She had no idea. Tomorrow, I would sit across from one of the most powerful CEOs in the industry. Tomorrow, I would begin the next chapter of my career. One where I was no longer just an employee. Tomorrow, I would take the first step toward building something far bigger than Evermark had ever imagined. And Ashley? Ashley would soon realize exactly what she had lost. I took a slow sip of my whiskey, the warmth spreading through my chest, and leaned back into my chair. Because while Evermark was busy celebrating Steve's promotion, I was about to change the game entirely. The next morning, I arrived at the cafe 15 minutes early. Not because I was eager, but because I wanted to control the environment. I wanted to choose my seat, to have a moment to observe, to settle into the space with confidence. This wasn't just a casual coffee meeting. This was a power move, and I intended to play it perfectly. I ordered a black coffee, no cream, no sugar. The bitterness suited my mood. The cafe was sleek and modern, filled with early morning professionals tapping away at their laptops, having hushed business discussions, strategizing their next big deal. Just another day in the corporate jungle. I chose a table near the window, giving me a clear view of the entrance. The moment Noah Grant walked in, I wanted to be the first thing he saw. He arrived exactly on time. Not a minute early, not a minute late. That alone told me something about him. He was precise, methodical, a man who respected structure. Noah Grant was in his late 40s, tall, well-groomed, with an effortless confidence that only came from running an empire. Westbridge Industries wasn't just another company. It was a giant, a leader in tech innovation, project management, and global business solutions. And now, he wanted to talk to me. I stood as he approached, offering a firm handshake. His grip was solid, his eyes sharp, assessing. "Jamie," he greeted. "Glad you could make it." "Of course," I replied smoothly. "I appreciate the invitation." We sat, and he wasted no time. "I won't sugarcoat this," he said, leaning forward slightly. "I know about your resignation. I know Evermark just handed a major promotion to a guy who, frankly, I wouldn't trust to manage a lemonade stand. And I know you've been sitting on something big." I took a sip of my coffee, letting his words settle. He was testing me, pushing for a reaction. I gave him nothing. "Go on," I said evenly. He smiled slightly, clearly appreciating my composure. "Your system," he said. "I've heard whispers about it. A project management tool that optimizes efficiency, reduces redundancies, and streamlines operations at an industry-wide level. Evermark was blind to what they had, but I'm not. I want to know what it does, and more importantly, I want to know if you're willing to bring it to Westbridge." I let a slow smirk cross my face. "You've done your homework." "That's my job," he said simply. I leaned back in my chair, my fingers tapping against my coffee cup. "It's not just a tool," I said. "It's a game changer. Companies lose millions every year to inefficiency. Bottlenecks, miscommunication, outdated processes. My system doesn't just track progress. It analyzes patterns, predicts obstacles, and adapts in real time. It turns workflow into something predictable, scalable, and foolproof." Noah's eyes flickered with interest. "And you patented it." It wasn't a question. He already knew the answer. 6 months ago, I confirmed. Which means Evermark has no rights to it. They ignored it. They ignored me. And now, they don't get to have it. Noah's smile widened slightly, the kind of smile that said he appreciated the vengeance in my tone. "I like the way you think," he said. "And I like what you've built. I want it." I took another sip of my coffee. "That depends," I said smoothly, "on what you're offering." This was the moment when everything shifted. I wasn't just a guy looking for a job. I wasn't just another former employee looking to land on his feet. I was the asset here, and Noah Grant knew it. He reached into his briefcase and slid a folder across the table. "Take a look," he said. I opened it. Base salary, triple what I was making at Evermark. Equity, 10% stake in Westbridge's next innovation sector. Title, Vice President of Strategic Development. Full creative control over my systems integration. I kept my face neutral, but inside, I was already calculating my next move. This was a kingmaker deal. It wasn't just a job. It was a seat at the table, I closed the folder and met his gaze. I have two conditions, I said. He raised an eyebrow, intrigued. First, I continued, I want full autonomy over how this system is implemented. No bureaucracy. No corporate red tape. I run it my way. Noah nodded. Done. Second, I smiled. I want the press release to state, clearly, that Evermark had the opportunity to implement this system and chose to pass on it. Noah chuckled. You really want to twist the knife, don't you? They underestimated me, I said. I just want to make sure they realize exactly what they lost. Noah leaned back, considering me. Then he extended his hand. Welcome to Westbridge, Jamie. I shook his hand, sealing the deal. This wasn't just a career move. This was payback. That evening, I walked into my apartment feeling lighter than I had in years. For so long, I had played by Evermark's rules, let Ashley dictate my value, let a corrupt system decide what I was worth. But now, I was the one making the rules. My phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. An email from Ashley. I smirked, already knowing what it would say before I even opened it. Jamie, I think we may have made a mistake. Let's talk. I didn't reply. Instead, I drafted an email to Noah. Looking forward to the press release. Make sure Evermark's name is in bold. Then I set my phone down, poured myself a drink, and leaned back into my chair, staring out over the city skyline. Ashley thought she had beaten me. She thought she had secured her future. But now, she was about to realize just how wrong she was. I wasn't just moving on. I was moving up. 2 weeks later, on my last official day at Evermark, I walked into the office for the final time. The atmosphere felt different. There was a tension in the air, a subtle shift in the way people looked at me. Some with curiosity, some with concern, and others, especially those who had always sided with Ashley, with barely concealed panic. I wasn't supposed to leave like this. I was supposed to be broken. I was supposed to be licking my wounds, searching for a new job, regretting ever standing up for myself. But instead, I was walking out of here a king, and they had no idea what was about to hit them. I took my time clearing out the last few things from my desk, keeping my movements unhurried. Let them wonder. Let them whisper. Let them realize too late what they had done. Then, just as I expected, an email popped up on my screen. Subject: Final meeting, CEO's office. Ashley. Right on cue. I exhaled slowly, then stood, adjusting my jacket before making my way to her office. The walk felt different now. It was the same office, the same hallways, the same people, but everything had changed. Because now, I was untouchable. I stepped inside without knocking. She was sitting behind her desk, but this time, the smug smile was gone. For the first time in years, I saw something I never thought I'd see on her face. Doubt. She held my resignation letter in one hand, but what truly caught my attention was the document in her other hand. The report I had included in my resignation letter. She had finally read it, and now, she understood what she had lost. Jamie, she started, her voice different this time. Controlled. Careful. Why didn't you tell us about this system before? I let out a quiet chuckle, shaking my head slightly. I did, I said. 3 times. Her face paled. I watched as she shuffled through the pages, her fingers trembling slightly. She knew what she was looking at. She wasn't just realizing that she had ignored something valuable. She was realizing that she had ignored something that could have saved Evermark. Her voice dropped to something almost desperate. You patented it. I nodded. 6 months ago. Silence stretched between us. The kind of silence that made people realize just how badly they had messed up. Finally, she exhaled and straightened her shoulders, trying to regain some control. Too late. Jamie, let's be reasonable. We can match whatever offer you've gotten. I smiled. She was scrambling now. It's not about money, Ashley, I said. It's about respect. Her jaw clenched. She hated hearing that. For years, she had assumed I would always be there, always giving to the company without asking for anything in return. She had treated me as replaceable. And now, she was realizing just how irreplaceable I actually was. Jamie, we can. No. I cut in smoothly, my voice firm but calm. You had your chance. 3 years. 3 separate pitches. I sat in this very office, and you shot me down every single time. You said it wasn't feasible. You said we weren't ready for that level of change. And now, I gestured toward the document in her hand. Now, you're finally reading it because I'm leaving. She didn't speak, but I could see it in her face. The regret, the realization, the panic. I stood, adjusting my jacket, giving her one last look. "Enjoy your promotion," I said with a knowing smirk. "You and Steve are going to need all the luck you can get." And with that, I walked out. For the last time. That night, I sat in my new office at Westbridge, overlooking the city skyline. A view 10 times better than anything Evermark ever gave me. My name was already on the door. My system was already being integrated into the company's structure. I had an entire team under me, people who respected my vision, who understood my value. And the best part? I was just getting started. Then my phone buzzed. A text from an old colleague, Jake. "Ashley's in full meltdown mode. Steve has no idea what he's doing. The board is furious." I leaned back in my chair, laughing quietly to myself. The cracks were already starting to show, and I hadn't even made my next move yet. 3 months had passed since I left Evermark, and the fallout was even worse than I had predicted. It started as whispers, missed deadlines, unhappy clients, and minor errors that should have been easily preventable. Then, those whispers grew louder. Projects collapsed. Clients walked away. Investors panicked. And at the center of it all, Steve, the man Ashley had chosen over me. The man who had smirked as I packed up my desk, as if he had won some great victory. The man who had no idea how deep he was in over his head. And now, he was drowning. I leaned back in my chair, scrolling through the latest industry news. Evermark Incorporated faces client exodus amid efficiency crisis, stock down 30%. The headline alone was enough to make me smirk. But it was the article that really made it worth reading. I skimmed through it, my eyes catching on key phrases. Several longtime clients have cited severe project mismanagement since the departure of a key executive, leading to significant delays and operational inefficiencies. I knew exactly who that key executive was, and so did Ashley. As I continued reading, I found a quote from one of Evermark's former clients, one I had personally managed during my time there. "The quality of service at Evermark has deteriorated significantly. Projects that once ran like clockwork are now riddled with delays. It's like they lost the one thing holding them together." I exhaled through my nose, shaking my head slightly. They had lost me, and they were just now realizing what that meant. Across from me, my assistant, Claire, knocked lightly on the door before stepping in. "Your 3 p.m. call with Westbridge's expansion team is in 10 minutes, she reminded me. "Thanks, Claire. I'll be ready," I said, closing my laptop. As she turned to leave, she hesitated. "Oh, one more thing," she added. "You got a voicemail from someone at Evermark. I think it was one of the board members. Should I forward it to you?" I smirked. "No need," I said. "I already know what they want." Evermark was falling apart, and now they were desperate. They thought I'd want to hear them out. They thought they still had leverage. They were wrong. Later that evening, I got a text from Jake, my former colleague at Evermark. "Dude, you need to hear this. Call me." Curious, I dialed his number. "Jake," I said when he picked up. "What's going on?" He let out a low whistle before speaking. "Man, you would not believe the disaster unfolding over here. Ashley is losing it. Steve just resigned." I blinked. "Wait, what?" "Yup. He couldn't handle the pressure. The board basically threw him under the bus, blaming him for everything. He walked out this morning. No 2-week notice. No farewell speech. Just gone." I let out a short laugh. "So let me get this straight," I said. "Ashley gave him my promotion, and now he's running for the hills." "Pretty much," Jake said. "And dude, it gets worse. She's next. The board is done with her. Investors are threatening to pull funding unless there's a leadership restructure." I shook my head in amusement. "And to think, she was so sure that she had won," I muttered. "Yeah, well, she's realizing now that she played herself," Jake said. "And the worst part? She still doesn't get why it all fell apart." I chuckled. Of course, she didn't. Ashley had spent years prioritizing office politics over real skill. She had played her game, rigged the system, made decisions based on personal favoritism rather than actual qualifications. And now, she was paying the price. "So what happens next?" I asked. "The board is scrambling," Jake said. "They're looking for someone to come in and clean up the mess. And from what I hear, they want you." I rolled my eyes. "Of course they do," I muttered. After everything, after years of being overlooked, dismissed, and undervalued, now they needed me. But they were too late. Westbridge had already given me everything Evermark refused to, and I wasn't about to go backward. "I assume Ashley hasn't reached out yet?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Not yet. Jake said. But give it time. She will. And when she did, I'd be ready. The next morning, I was sitting in my office when my phone vibrated. A new email. I already knew who it was from before I even looked. Ashley. I exhaled slowly, letting the moment settle before opening the message. Jamie, I think we may have made a mistake. I'd like to discuss an opportunity for you to return. Name your price. I smiled. Of course, she wanted me back. But the problem was, I wasn't for sale. I stared at the email for a long moment before typing out my response. Ashley, I appreciate the offer, but I'm exactly where I need to be. Best of luck. Jamie. Then, without another thought, I hit send. And just like that, the door to Evermark was officially closed forever. I leaned back in my chair, staring out at the city skyline, taking in the reality of my new life. Westbridge was thriving. My system was being rolled out globally. I had full control over my work, a team that respected me, and a salary that made Evermark's look like pocket change. And Evermark? Evermark was bleeding out, and they had no one to blame but themselves. The best part? I was just getting started. It didn't take long. 2 days after I sent my final email to Ashley, my phone started ringing. At first, I ignored it. I let it go to voicemail, letting her desperation fester. She wasn't used to being ignored. She was used to controlling the conversation, being the one people had to impress, the one making the decisions. But now, she was the one chasing after me. I let it ring again, and again. Then, a new email popped up in my inbox. Subject, urgent, let's talk. I smirked before clicking it open. Jamie, I know things ended on bad terms, but I really think we should discuss this. Evermark is willing to negotiate. Whatever you want, we can make it work. Just take a meeting. Please. Please. I never thought I'd see Ashley beg. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the email, letting it sit there for a moment. I had two choices. I could ignore her entirely, let her twist in the wind, let Evermark continue its downward spiral until it was nothing but a cautionary tale in the industry. Or I could play the game one last time. I drummed my fingers on my desk, considering my options. Then, I made my decision. I picked up my phone, scrolled through my missed calls, and finally, I called her back. She answered immediately, as if she had been staring at her phone, waiting. Jamie, she breathed, the tension thick in her voice. Ashley, I said smoothly. There was a pause, a hesitation. She was used to having the upper hand, used to me being the one fighting for her attention. But now, the dynamic had flipped. Thank you for calling me back, she finally said. I know you're busy, but I really think we should talk. I gathered that from the 5 missed calls in your email, I said dryly. Another pause. She hated this. She hated that she had to convince me. Jamie, she said, her voice lowering into something carefully controlled, like she was trying to regain some authority. You know Evermark isn't the same without you. Things have changed. That's one way to put it, I said, tilting my head. Steve is gone, she continued, trying to sound unaffected, but I could hear the strain. The board is looking for new leadership. There's an opportunity here, a big one, and I think it should be you. I nearly laughed. 3 months ago, she had looked me in the eye and told me I wasn't a team player, that I wasn't right for a leadership position. And now? Now she wanted me to save her. Interesting, I said, dragging the word out. Jamie, listen. I don't think I need to, I interrupted. I think I already know exactly what's happening. Evermark is falling apart. The board is panicking, and you're about to lose everything. So now, you want the guy you dismissed to come back and fix it. Silence. A long, glaring silence. Finally, she spoke again, her voice tight. It's not that simple. Oh, I think it is. Another silence. This time, she exhaled sharply, the sound of frustration barely concealed. Jamie, she said, softer this time. I know we made mistakes. I know I made mistakes. But we need you. The company needs you. Just come in for a conversation. That's all I'm asking. I tapped my fingers against my desk, letting the moment stretch out. She needed me to say yes. She needed me to give her hope. Instead, I smiled and said, no. A sharp intake of breath. Jamie, be reasonable. Oh, I'm being very reasonable, I said smoothly. See, I did my part. I gave Evermark everything. And you threw it away. You made your choice. Now you have to live with it. I can fix this, she pushed. We can fix this. Ashley, I said, my voice calm but firm. There is no we anymore. Silence. Finally, she let out a slow exhale. defeated. "You're really not going to help?" she asked, her voice quiet now. "No," I said simply. A beat passed, then another, and then she hung up. No goodbye, no last attempt to persuade me. Just silence. I stared at my phone for a moment before setting it down, shaking my head with amusement. Ashley had always thought she was untouchable. She had spent years thinking she was the smartest person in the room. And now, she had finally learned what it felt like to lose. That night, I got another text from Jake. Ashley looked like a ghost in today's meeting. "It's over for her, man. The board is already talking about replacing her." I smiled to myself. Of course they were. Ashley had built her entire career on playing politics, not actual skill. And now, she was realizing the hard way that when everything collapsed, there was no one left to protect her. Because in the end, she wasn't as untouchable as she thought. And I had just proven it. The downfall was quicker than I expected. Evermark had been teetering on the edge for months. But after that phone call with Ashley, I knew the final blow was coming. And when it did, it would be brutal. I arrived at Westbridge early that morning, coffee in one hand, phone in the other, scrolling through the latest industry news. And there it was, the headline that would send shockwaves through the entire corporate world. Evermark CEO Ashley Dawson removed after leadership crisis. Board announces immediate restructuring. I exhaled slowly, leaning back in my chair as I read the article. Ashley had been fired. They had finally done it. The board had cut her loose to save themselves. I skimmed through the details, my smirk growing with every paragraph. After months of financial decline, client losses, and internal turmoil, Evermark's board of directors has announced the removal of CEO Ashley Dawson, effective immediately. Sources close to the company indicate that board members had grown frustrated with Dawson's inability to stabilize operations following the departure of key executives. Dawson's tenure was marked by a controversial promotion that many industry experts believe contributed to the company's downward spiral. I laughed under my breath. That controversial promotion was Steve. The very same Steve who had fled the company when the heat turned up, leaving Ashley alone to deal with the fallout. Karma was beautiful. As I reached the bottom of the article, a familiar name caught my eye. Industry experts speculate that Evermark may attempt to recruit former executive Jamie Carter to aid in the company's restructuring efforts. Those sources indicate Carter has already found success in his new role at Westbridge Industries. I rolled my eyes. Recruit me? Again? These people never learned. Just then, my office phone rang. I already knew who it would be before I even answered. Jamie Carter speaking. "Jamie." The voice on the other end was calm, professional, but calculated. It was Mark Caldwell, Evermark's chairman. The man who had once barely acknowledged my presence at meetings. And now, he was calling me personally. "Mark," I said smoothly, leaning back in my chair. "What can I do for you?" "I'm sure you've seen the news," he started, his tone neutral. "I wanted to reach out personally to discuss an opportunity." "Let me guess," I said. "Evermark wants me to come back and clean up the mess Ashley left behind." A brief pause. "We believe you're uniquely qualified to help restore Evermark's reputation," he said. I almost laughed. They weren't even trying to hide it. "Jamie, let's be honest," Mark continued. "You were the backbone of this company. Losing you was a mistake. I won't deny that." I raised an eyebrow. "Funny," I said, "because when I worked there, no one seemed to see my value. But now that everything's falling apart, suddenly I'm the backbone?" "We're prepared to make it worth your while," he said, ignoring my sarcasm. "A leadership position. Full autonomy over operational changes. Double your previous salary." I let out a low chuckle. "Mark, let me stop you right there," I said. "I'm going to save you some time and say no." Silence. Then he sighed. "I understand why you feel that way," he said. "But Jamie, this isn't just about us. Think about the employees who are still here. The ones who depended on you." I narrowed my eyes. The guilt trip. That was their final play. They wanted me to believe that coming back would be some grand act of mercy, that I would be the hero returning to save the people who had once ignored me. Not happening. The employees who are still there? I echoed. "You mean the same people who stood by while Ashley promoted Steve over me? The same ones who looked the other way when I was forced out?" Another long pause. "Jamie," Mark said carefully, "we need someone who understands the company. Someone who can fix what's broken." I smirked. "You already had that person, Mark," I said. "You just didn't appreciate him until it was too late." More silence. He knew. He knew I was right. "I appreciate the offer," I said after a moment. But I'm exactly where I need to be. Then, before he could say another word, I ended the call. That night, I was sitting in my apartment when my phone buzzed with a new text from Jake. Ashley called me today. She's not doing well. I stared at the message for a moment before replying. Not my problem. Jake responded almost immediately. Damn, dude. No mercy. I exhaled slowly before typing my next message. She had no mercy for me when she promoted Steve. She made her bed. Now she has to lie in it. This time, there was a long pause before Jake finally responded. Fair enough. I set my phone down and leaned back, staring out the window at the city lights. Ashley had spent years believing she was untouchable, believing she was the smartest person in the room, believing she could manipulate people and come out on top. And now, she had been removed, discarded, forgotten, just like she had done to me. And the best part? I didn't even have to lift a finger. The universe had done the work for me. A week after Evermark officially removed Ashley, I was in my office at Westbridge, reviewing expansion plans for the rollout of my system across multiple industries. Everything was moving fast, faster than I had imagined. Westbridge was thriving. Our efficiency metrics were breaking industry records, clients were lining up, and the press was all over it. Every tech and business publication was talking about how Westbridge had revolutionized workflow management overnight. And at the heart of it all, me. This was what I had always envisioned. Not being a pawn in someone else's corporate game, not waiting for approval from people who didn't respect me, but being in control, calling the shots, leading. I was exactly where I needed to be. Then, my assistant, Claire, knocked on my office door. Jamie, I just got a call from Evermark's board. They're asking for a meeting. I didn't even look up from my screen. Tell them I'm not interested. I did, Claire said, but they insisted. They said they have a proposal that demands serious consideration. I finally looked up, narrowing my eyes. They weren't giving up. They were desperate. And if I was being honest, I was curious. Fine, I said. Schedule it. Let's hear what they have to say. 2 days later, I walked into a private conference room at Evermark's headquarters. I hadn't stepped foot in this building since the day I walked out, and now, I was walking in on my own terms. Mark Caldwell, the board chairman, stood to greet me as I entered. Jamie, he said, forcing a smile. Good to see you. Wish I could say the same. I replied smoothly, taking a seat across from him. He didn't even flinch. He knew I wasn't here for pleasantries. Also in the room were 3 other board members. People who had barely acknowledged me back when I worked here. Now, they looked like they were about to beg. Mark cleared his throat and slid a folder across the table. I'll get straight to the point, he said. We want you to come back to Evermark as our new CEO. I stared at him for a long moment before laughing. I actually laughed. I leaned back in my chair, shaking my head. Let me get this straight, I said. You fired Ashley, your golden girl, and now you want me, the guy she forced out, to fix the mess she left behind? Mark didn't even try to deny it. Yes. I picked up the folder and flipped through it. Their offer was massive. Triple my old salary. Full executive control. A huge stock package. They weren't just asking me to return. They were begging me. I closed the folder and set it aside, my expression unreadable. Why should I even consider this? I asked. Mark leaned forward, his voice lower now. Because, Jamie, Evermark is still one of the biggest names in the industry. And if you take the reins, you'd be running your own empire. You wouldn't just be fixing a broken company. You'd be shaping its future. Your future. I studied him carefully. He was good. He knew how to sell it. But the problem was, I wasn't buying. Let me ask you something, Mark, I said. What happens if I say no? He didn't even blink. Then Evermark collapses. I tilted my head. And that's my problem, why? Silence. Mark sighed, rubbing his temples. Look, Jamie, I know we handled things poorly before. I won't sugarcoat it. But this is bigger than personal grudges. Evermark needs a leader. A real one. And we're willing to make it worth your while. I sat there for a moment, tapping my fingers against the table. I could feel the weight of the moment. They had once dismissed me like I was nothing. Now, they were offering me the keys to the kingdom. And maybe some part of me should have wanted that. But I didn't. Because Evermark didn't deserve me. They had never deserved me. And now, they were realizing that too late. I stood up, adjusting my jacket. I appreciate the offer, I said. But I have to decline. Mark frowned. Jamie, Westbridge gave me everything Evermark never did. I cut in. and I'm not about to trade that for a sinking ship. Silence. The board members exchanged glances, realizing that they had already lost me. I picked up the folder with their offer, flipped it open, and tore the contract in half before tossing it back onto the table. Best of luck, I said smoothly. You're going to need it. And then, I walked out. Again. Only this time, I wasn't leaving as an employee. I was leaving as the man who had won. That night, I was in my office at Westbridge, sipping a glass of whiskey when my phone buzzed. A message from Jake. Dude, just heard about the meeting. You really told them to go to hell. I smirked, taking another sip before typing back. Not in those words. But yeah. Jake's response was immediate. Damn. Ashley must be losing her mind. I exhaled slowly, staring at my phone. Ashley. I hadn't heard from her since she was fired. And honestly, I didn't need to, because I already knew exactly what she was thinking. She thought she had secured her future when she chose Steve over me. She thought I would be nothing without Evermark. She thought I would come crawling back. But now, she was watching from the sidelines as I thrived. She was irrelevant. And I was just getting started. The day after I rejected Evermark's desperate offer, I arrived at my office feeling lighter than ever. There was something deeply satisfying about knowing I had all the power now, something Ashley and her board had never believed possible. For years, they had seen me as just another employee, a piece of the corporate machine. Now, they were watching as I thrived without them, while their empire crumbled into dust. The news of my rejection spread fast. By noon, I had 5 different emails from industry journalists asking for a statement. Westbridge's PR team even asked if I wanted to do an official press release. Should we address the rumors? Claire, my assistant, asked when she stepped into my office. I sipped my coffee, considering it. No, I said finally. Let them wonder. Because that was the best part. Evermark wasn't just falling apart. They were scrambling to understand why. They had assumed I would jump at the chance to return. They had thought I was still the same man who spent years waiting for their approval. They had no idea who I had become. And now, I was untouchable. That evening, I got a call from Jake. Man, he said, I don't think you realize just how bad things are over here. Oh, I said, leaning back in my chair, intrigued. Ashley's been calling everyone, he said. She even tried reaching out to old clients, trying to convince them to come back. But the problem is, they don't trust her anymore. I finished for him. Jake sighed. Exactly. The reputation hit was too big. And with you at Westbridge, they all know who the real brains behind the operation was. I smirked. So what's the next move? I asked. You're gonna love this, Jake said. The board is looking for a new CEO. And guess who they just reached out to? I already knew the answer before he said it. Steve. Yep, Jake confirmed. The same guy who ran the company into the ground. They're so desperate, they're trying to bring him back. I let out a slow chuckle. They never learn, do they? Nope, Jake said. And that's why they're gonna sink. And he was right. Because the truth was, Evermark's biggest mistake wasn't just losing me. It was proving to the world that they didn't value the right people. And now, they were paying for it. That weekend, I attended a major tech and business conference on behalf of Westbridge. Every major player in the industry was there. Investors, CEOs, rising entrepreneurs. The perfect place to cement my reputation. As I walked through the venue, shaking hands and exchanging business cards, I could feel the difference. People weren't just acknowledging me. They were seeking me out. I had become someone that mattered. Then, as I turned the corner toward the networking lounge, I spotted her. Ashley. She was standing near the bar, a drink in hand, wearing a forced smile as she spoke to a group of executives. And the moment she saw me, her entire expression shifted. Her confident facade cracked. For the first time, I saw something I never thought I'd see from Ashley. Defeat. I walked past without stopping, barely acknowledging her, but I could feel her eyes following me. She was watching me the way someone watches a ghost from their past, with a mixture of regret, disbelief, and something close to fear. Because she knew I had won. And she had become irrelevant. Later that night, I was back in my hotel suite, sipping whiskey and reading through my emails when a new message popped up. From Ashley Dawson. Subject, can we talk? I stared at the screen for a moment, letting out a slow exhale. I could already guess what it said. I clicked it open. Jamie, I know things didn't end well between us, and I know I don't deserve a response, but I needed to reach out. I've made mistakes. I see that now. And I know I can't change the past, but I just want you to know, I'm sorry. I should have valued you more. I should have listened. I don't expect anything from you. I just needed to say it. Ashley, apologizing. I never thought I'd see the day. I sat there for a moment, staring at the words, wondering if I should even respond. Then, finally, I did. Ashley, I appreciate the message, but some mistakes can't be undone. Good luck. And with that, I closed the laptop, took another sip of whiskey, and let the past fade away. Because the best revenge was knowing that I never needed it. I had already won. The morning after Ashley's email, I sat in my office at Westbridge, staring out over the city skyline. It was a perfect morning, the kind of morning that reminded me just how much had changed in such a short amount of time. Just 6 months ago, I was stuck in a company that didn't value me, working for a woman who saw me as replaceable, waiting for an opportunity that would never come. And now, I was leading an industry revolution. Westbridge had officially launched my project management system nationwide, and the results were staggering. Productivity had skyrocketed. Companies were saving millions in wasted hours. Investors were pouring in, eager to be a part of something that was changing the way businesses operated. I had built something that mattered. And best of all, I had done it on my own terms. As I leaned back in my chair, Claire knocked on my door. Jamie, I have the final numbers from the rollout. Thought you'd want to see them. She handed me a folder. I flipped it open, scanning the figures. Client acquisition up 230%. Efficiency ratings at a record high. Industry adoption accelerating faster than projections. I smiled. This is huge, I said, setting the folder down. Claire smirked. I figured you'd like it. She hesitated for a moment before adding, oh, and you got another email from Evermark. Mark Caldwell again. Should I forward it? I let out a quiet laugh, shaking my head. No need, I said. I already know what it says. Evermark had lost everything. Their credibility, their clients, their last chance at a future. And now, they wanted me to come back and save them. But I wasn't in the business of rescuing people who had buried me. Ashley had learned that lesson the hard way. And now, Evermark was about to learn it too. That evening, I attended an exclusive business gala hosted by Westbridge. The biggest names in the industry were there. It was a celebration of our success, of the impact we were making, of the future we were shaping. As I walked through the venue, shaking hands with executives, investors, and innovators, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. For so long, I had been fighting for recognition, for respect, for a seat at the table. And now, I owned the damn table. As I sipped my whiskey, a familiar voice cut through the noise. Jamie. I turned, and there she was. Ashley. She looked different. The confidence, the smugness, the power she had once wielded so effortlessly, it was gone. She wasn't the queen of the corporate world anymore. She was just another guest at a party she no longer belonged to. Didn't think I'd see you here, I said, swirling my drink. Didn't think I'd have the courage to show up, she admitted, offering a small, tired smile. She hesitated, then exhaled. Jamie, I just wanted to say it again. I'm sorry. I studied her for a moment, waiting for the catch, for the manipulation, the strategy, the power play. But this time, there wasn't one. She was just defeated. And somehow, that was more satisfying than any revenge could have been. I know, I said simply. She nodded, as if accepting that was the best she could hope for. Then, with a final glance around the room, she stepped back and walked away. And that was the end of our story. As the night stretched on, I stood at the balcony, overlooking the city I had built my future in. This was my moment, my victory. And the best part? I hadn't just survived Evermark. I had outgrown it. I pulled out my phone and opened a new email draft. To Westbridge Board. Subject, next big expansion. Because while Ashley and Evermark faded into irrelevance, I was just getting started.